This episode of Fatso Radio is brought to you by Volpe Martial Arts. Volpe Martial Arts is KW's hottest, newest Kung Fu and Hapkido martial arts school, folks. And welcome to Fatso Radio. My name is Carlo. It is my pleasure to come to you each and every Friday night. This Friday, folks, what do I talk to you about? Talking about my concerns about COVID, around the vaccines, just around everything about COVID. I also talk to you about some common sense stuff, what I think about just some advertising and the medical industry itself. So, without further ado, folks, thank you so much for listening, watching, subscribing, and sharing. I love you all. Peace. Lily, take it away. Fatso Radio.
Fatso, the really good podcast show.
Fatso, our very first podcast show.
Yeah. Hey everybody, welcome to Fatso Radio. How you doing? Another Friday, folks, and it is my pleasure to come to you each and every Friday. Again, another Friday night. It is May 28th. Wow, I can't believe it. What's going on, May? What's going on? This is the end of May, right? So this week, what happened? My brother's birthday this week. Happy birthday, Adam. Sifu Adam. Good time to remind everybody that this episode and every episode is brought to you by Volpe Martial Arts. That's right. So Volpe Martial Arts is KW's newest, hottest Kung Fu and Hapkido school. Check it out. Sifu Adam Volpe is my brother. Comes to you. Brings his lifelong passion of martial arts. Hapkido, Korean style. Kung Fu, more of a Chinese style. An awesome fusion of them both. Self-defense, forms, weapons, board breaking. We learn it all there, folks. Check it out, volpemartialarts.com. Okay, folks, let's get right into it today. So what do I want to talk about today? Much like other things that's going on, or much like the plethora of things that's going on right now in the world, there's so many things to talk about. But I want to talk about COVID, of course. Everybody else is talking about COVID. How can you not talk about COVID? But what I want to talk about specifically about COVID are the vaccines right now. So first of all, I'm not giving anybody shit for taking the vaccines. I can't blame anybody at all for taking the vaccines, nor can I blame anybody for not wanting to take the vaccines or having hesitancy around the vaccines. It's absolutely natural to have hesitancy over a new drug, something that is, by all accounts, experimental. Even the people that are for it or against it are calling it experimental, right? So it is experimental. Let's establish that. So there are some concerns I have, of course. The number one concern I do have, and I want to get right out there and don't beat around the bush, is it safe? Right? Is it safe long-term? And I understand that this may be a very, very difficult question for a lot of people to ask themselves because if you've already had the shot, you may say, well, what's the point of me even asking if it's safe or not? Well, there is a point because there's another shot coming out, right? You can stop yourself from taking another shot if you think it's not safe. But if you do think it's safe and if it is safe in your mind, then go ahead and take the other shot. Like I said, I'm not saying either way, but I'm giving you my opinion and the things that are making me think. These are the things that are making me think. So is it safe, right? We know there are side effects. We know there are side effects like any other drug, any other, whether it's experimental drug or not. I mean, during the experimental process, during the testing phases of drugs, right? During the trials of these drugs, they find out what side effects are possible and they write down the whole list of side effects. These vaccines, like any other vaccines, like any other shots, like any other medicines, comes with their side effects. So my question to you, and again, I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not saying don't take it, but I'm asking, I want to get people to think about these questions. Is it safe? Are the side effects, and there are side effects, right? I don't know what they are offhand, but are the side effects worth the risk, right? So we know it's a very, very high survival rate for this disease. And this is the reason why this number one question comes up in my mind. Is it safe? Is it safe, and is it worth the risk with the safety? So we may find that this is safe. It may be safe now. We may find in 3 years that it is safe. We may find in 5 years that it is safe. Most drugs take years to get processed through their trials, through the authorization, through the safety measures and the just the steps that has to take, right? There are also some other things about the safety of this that concerns me. So again, the side effects. Do people know what the side effects are before they get the vaccine? I think even if there is consent, I don't think it's fully informed consent. And I mentioned this before, and I don't truly think it is fully conformed because if the people giving you the shots don't fully have all of the information necessary, and because it is experimental in my mind, there are still going to be more and more things that come out, right? Again, I'm not saying it's not good. I'm not saying it is good. But what I'm saying, these are some questions that I am asking myself, and I'm asking doctors and everybody who's involved with this, right? So are the side effects worth the risks? If this disease, and this has been stated and statistics show that it is very, very high survival rate, right? Now, you may be in the high risk, you may be in a category or a demographic that is higher risk and higher chance of complications. And then in my mind, the higher risk you are, the more pre-existing conditions you have, the worse your health is, the higher in the riskier category you're in, demographic, age, all of that, right? Then that would increase the likelihood that I would take the vaccine or that I would be interested in the vaccine if it's safe. This is what I'm going through, and this is my thought process, right? So I don't consider myself, and this, just to go through this example right now, for anybody who's interested, again, I'm not a doctor, so don't take my advice as medical advice, but this is what I'm going through, and this may be valuable to you as to put yourself in my shoes or to put each other in each other's shoes. So my thought is, I'm 43, almost 43. I don't consider myself high risk because I consider myself in good health. Even though I have a little bit of cancer and we're monitoring it, and technically, statistically, I would be in a high risk category. I don't consider myself high risk at all because, quite frankly, I don't get sick. I haven't had a cold in a few years. I can't remember the last time I had a cold. I'm in, the best health of my life, relatively, the best shape of my life, even. So I don't consider myself a high risk. I'm not technically obese. I'm actually on the borderline of obesity, but I'm not morbidly obese. And that's another risk category, right? So these are the things that put people at risk. And I understand that. I'm going to talk about a little more of the risks later on, but I don't consider, with all things considered, I don't consider myself in that high risk category. So I don't consider myself someone who, I'm not interested in it myself. Will I be interested in it in a couple of years from now? If I find out, or if, the studies come out that it is completely safe, probably not. The reason that I'm not interested in it specifically for me is because it is a coronavirus. We've known about coronaviruses. And as the time goes on, we realize that early intervention there are some modalities that work, right? We realize now that a lot of the early deaths, it could have been treated a little bit better. It's unfortunate. Nobody knew, but we know now, right? So knowing now that the disease or the virus is not as deadly as we thought it was, and knowing that it's not as risky, for the whole society and for civilization as we thought it was before, this is the reason why I'm not very interested in it. But again, it's the safety of the vaccine that I want to talk about right now. If it was 100% safe, and of course I would have, I mean, I don't think anything's probably 100% safe, but if it's gone through the trials, if it's gone through the rigorous testing and evaluation and scrutiny that most drugs have to, or that all drugs essentially have to go through, then I would feel much better about it, right? The other thing is, so that's my first point on the safety of it. I'm not convinced that it's safe. And if you are convinced that it's safe, that's okay. Again, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but in my mind, in my opinion, there is not nearly enough information to show that it's been safe. There are deaths. That's the other thing I want to talk about now. There are deaths that are accumulated, that are contributed to the COVID vaccine. It's not just a couple deaths. There's more and more. There are thousands of deaths. I read a report that said there are around 10,000 deaths worldwide attributed to this vaccine. I don't know for sure if that's true. Please prove me if I'm wrong. Show me the links that show how many worldwide deaths there are from this vaccine. Here's a point that gets me upset and gets me really worried about this. Through my research and through my reading, I've understood and I've read that most trials, human trials, phase 1, phase 2 trials for drugs, for new therapeutics, if there are 20, 30, 40, 50 deaths, then these trials are canceled. Most times, if there's anything like 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 deaths, let me say that again, 50 deaths, folks, and then a lot of these trials are canceled. Most of these trials that I've read are completely canceled. There are tens of thousands of people now that are dying from this, and that's worrisome, right? It's worrisome because on a regular trial, this is the part of the experiment that a lot of people get upset about and doesn't get talked about, I guess. And let me explain, at least my opinion on it anyway, is that if this was a regular test, experimental drug, and they had a small sample size, then that would be something. But the ramifications of having a worldwide test is, in my opinion, is very, very scary, because they're essentially testing the whole world, right, on something that they've developed and tested and showing that it's been safe in around 2 months of analysis or 2 months of trials and 2 months of testing. 2 months compared to years and years of most drugs, that's very, very worrisome. The other thing that's scaring me about the whole vaccine is that they're encouraging people. First of all, they're encouraging everybody to take the vaccine, right? So I have a couple problems with that. First of all, if you have had COVID, if you've contacted COVID, whether you've had symptoms or not, but if you've had COVID, tested positive for COVID, and then recovered from COVID, you have natural immunity, right? So what natural immunity is, just as it sounds, it's immunity now. That is essentially like it's like it would have infected you in the first place. You have this natural ability now to fight off COVID-19. If you have it, if you've contacted it naturally, fight it off. Your body, the reason the way you're able to fight it off is because your body's able to create defenders, right? The white blood cells that you need to defend itself, the memory cells that tells your body these are the proteins. If it comes in contact again, make these antibodies and so on and fight this, right? You have that natural immunity when you get COVID naturally. So if you've had COVID, why are they suggesting getting the vaccine? Here's my first thing. And I don't understand. Please let me know. If you're saying to me that you better safe than sorry, that's nonsense. Because if you've had any other disease where you get lifelong immunity after, you would never want to take a vaccine for that. Secondly, the vaccine can never be as good as natural immunity, right? And which then contributes to herd immunity. So if the vaccine can never be as good as natural immunity, but it is still pretty good, right? But if it's never as good as regular immunity, why aren't we talking about getting regular immunity? Why aren't we talking about having natural immunity like we do for chickenpox parties, like we used to do for chickenpox years and years ago, right? People die from chickenpox. I don't know the numbers, but people die probably every year still from the chickenpox. Much less than they used to be, of course, but we used to have chickenpox parties, and it was a thing where people would get contacted. If your kid got chickenpox, you'd meet up with your sisters or brothers or whatever the case may be, or even if it's unintentional, sometimes you'd have a chickenpox party. All the kids would get chickenpox, and then they wouldn't get it again. You'd be immune to it. So why are they suggesting people that have natural immunity to COVID, get the COVID vaccine? Secondly, when you go get a COVID vaccine, are they testing you? Do you know if you've had COVID even? And if you've had COVID even, my opinion, again, I'm not a doctor, what I would do is if I went there to get a COVID shot vaccine, which I'm not interested in doing, but if I went to get a vaccine, and they test me, the PCR, or any kind of test rather, which I hope they would do, but I don't think they do, and they found that I had the antibodies, I would turn around and walk away. Why wouldn't you walk away? And that's the thing. So if those are the people that I'm concerned about, also people that are low risk, I'm really concerned about. I'm really, 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 really concerned about children and pregnant women. Let's talk about that. Children, they're encouraging children to get the shot they know they're low risk. Schools are low transmission risk. They know that. Playgrounds, daycares are low transmission risk. Children have lowest symptoms, lowest hospitalizations. I think there maybe is one death in Canada wide. I'm not sure, but maybe one death or two deaths in children, if that. Why are they suggesting children get immunized? Why are they suggesting this? Not only that, why are they suggesting and encouraging children 12 years old to get this shot without their parents' consent? This is a big one, folks. The city of Toronto has done this, and other cities have done this too. I think San Francisco, maybe. I've seen some other cities. Very, very liberal leaning. And it hurts me to say this, liberal leaning, because I am a classic liberal, folks. But this is crazy how city of Toronto has encouraged. I saw a tweet, and I'm going to put it on in the show notes or in the video if I can. Maybe I'll get some fancy stuff up here. Basically said, people as young as 12 years old can come down and get their shot. No need for no need for your parents to bring you, as their consent is not needed. Something to that effect, which made me almost throw up, folks. 12 years old. My daughter's 10 years old. Very smart, very sharp 10-year-old who would probably right away see the red flag in that. But that's not the point. There are many, many 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds even maybe even 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds. Folks, do you remember being 18 years old and knowing everything? Okay. I thought I knew everything. It turned out I knew shit. So you're telling me a 12-year-old has the common sense, the wisdom, and not only just the wisdom and common sense, but do they have the education that tells them, or that would give them the ability to make a sound decision, right? We all know that when you inject something into your body, you're getting whatever you're injecting into the body. Okay, common sense. What's in there? No kid knows what's in there. Most adults don't know what's in there. Most doctors you ask are not going to know what's in that shot. Let's be honest, right? And that's okay. Normally, if it's gone through years of testing and if it's super safe, and if more than 50 people aren't dying from it, those are some facts. Okay, so if that's the case normally, then even then I would never encourage. First of all, I would never encourage anybody, any official, any city official, any medical official, to go talk to any 12-year-old without talking to their parents. Are you kidding me? 12 years old, not only being a minor, that's a child. A 12-year-old is a child, and you're telling me you're trying to encourage 12-year-olds that are watching your Twitter account, your TikTok account, probably an Instagram account, and all that stuff, and they're watching that, going, "Well, the city of Toronto, Mama, Daddy, is telling me that I can go downtown to City Hall or Nathan Square, whatever the hell it is, and get my shot." So then here's a conversation that you're going to have probably with your child. I know I'm going to have it with my child. When the child reads this and says, well, I'm going to go down there and get the shot. If you're a family that's all for it, you may be okay sending your child there by itself. But if you're a family that's not all for it, or if you're a family that's just questioning what the hell the city is doing, telling your kid what to do, then you're going to say, Susie, Johnny, what's going on? Let's talk about this. We have a plan for every other medical procedure you have. We have a plan and a discussion for every other health concern you go through life. You're 12 years old. Talk to your parents. If you have children that are 12 and 13 and 14, if you have children at all, please talk to them about this. Please let them know that I don't know what to let them know, but just let them know that this is around, and talk to your own doctors about this, folks. Like, see what they think. I don't think it's good to ever encourage anything to a child without their parents knowing. They're a child. There's a reason why we have child protection laws. There's a reason why they're a minor. The reason why you can't drive. The reason why they can't vote. The reason why they can't go out and buy alcohol or buy a house. Right? There's a reason why they can't do that, because they're a child. So let's talk about that. The last thing I want to talk about with this whole vaccination scare, to me, it's scary, folks. It really is. But the last thing that I want to talk about today, or the last reason why it's worrisome for me, is that it's such a massive push, and I don't know if I understand it, quite honestly. It's a massive global, forced, essentially mass effort. I don't think I've ever seen this before. I don't think I've ever read about this before, anything like this before. Went out, and it's experimental. So think of the conditions that this is leading up to. If it wasn't experimental, if it wasn't controversial, right? If there wasn't all of these doctors speaking out worldwide, also that have been silenced and also been threatened to silence, if it wasn't all of this controversial stuff, then I could see something like, oh, we're just all on board. But you have to think about that, folks. The whole world is never all on board something, and there's for good reason, because you need to evaluate, you need to analyze, we need to really dig down and see what's going on with this. And honestly, that is worrisome for me. Why are we trying to, or why are they trying to, or why are whoever the powers is, why are we trying to get every single person vaccinated? I don't know. Maybe it's just an exercise in control. Maybe there's no nefariousness about it. Maybe there's no grand plan and there's nothing wrong with it and it's completely safe. But if they can get everybody to get a vaccine, right, under the guise of this is so dangerous, or that you need to do this. Remember, at the same time as there's this mass push to get everybody vaccinated, everybody, every official, every country official, every city official, every state official, everybody is saying, got to get everybody numbers, go, vaccinated. But why? There are many other things that could kill us. We don't put any effort even remotely close to this on all these other things that are completely preventable, right? And I'm going to talk about that in a bit. So that's the other thing. I don't understand why this big push is going. I don't understand why the governments and everybody is so big behind it, when it really does have, and we're finding out more and more that the survival rate is higher and higher. Yes, there are variants. Yes, the variants will always kill a little bit of people at the beginning, right? They'll always kill a little more people at the beginning because they don't know about it. They don't know how to treat it. And there's no immunity, of course, of it. As time goes on, they figure out how to treat it. But they're very similar, right? So that's all. Those are the reasons why I have concerns about it. Like I said, I'm not an anti-vaxxer per se. I'm really not. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to question any new vaccine that comes out, right? Of course, I'm going to question. I'm going to question anything that comes out, but I'm not anti-medicine. I'm not anti. I mean, I have criticisms against pharmaceutical industry, of course, but there is a time and there's a place and there's a need for emergency medicine and preventative medicine, all of these sorts of things. I just think that this is something that we're going to find out in the future. That I'm not saying we're going to find out. I'm worried. I'm worried that we're going to find out that there were some big mistakes through the rush push of this and through the rush acceptance of this. This mass acceptance where people are just going are just accepting it. They're just taking everything, and I don't know why they're taking it all. I think maybe it might just because of a fear, and that would make sense because I get it, right? I get it like everybody else. I'm afraid. Sorry, I was adjusting my camera there for a second, but I get it because I get afraid just like everybody else, and I think that's what it is. I think that we were so afraid of this, and I think that we are still afraid of this because people are dying, that we at times are just willing to take any sort of advice, any sort of direction, because we do feel helpless. And that's the thing, folks. I don't want us to feel helpless. I want us to empowered and feel like you have your health in your own hands. And that's part of the whole reason. That's part of the whole thing behind Fatso Radio as well, right? Taking the control of your own health. And once you find your own health, and once you feel like you have control of your own health, then things like this will look different. I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody else, but I'm saying if you've gone through some sort of adversity or health adversity, or gone through some sort of health challenge, and you've found some sort of a light at the end of the tunnel, if you found a path that works for you, and quite honestly, if you found the ingredients, or if you found the recipe that works for you, you're just going to feel strong, and you're going to feel like what you're doing is right. And if it does work, you're going to keep it up. This is one of the reasons why I feel so strong about natural immunity, or just not just natural immunity, but just the ability for your body to take care of itself. And because if you're healthy enough, right, theoretically, and I've read in every single medical book I've ever read, if you're healthy enough, your body will fight everything. Your body fights all types of bacteria every single day, all types of viruses every single day. So what makes someone get sick or not? We don't really know the answer, right? But it's probably around the state of health, your general state of health. If you're very, very healthy, you're going to be very, very resilient to this type of stuff. So that's what I want to talk about. The next thing I want to talk about is just some common sense, if I can, or just some, I don't know if it's called common sense, or just some hypocrisy I see around the world when it comes to the American and the Canadian and all the world, kind of the Diabetic Association, and yeah, let's talk about that right now. Diabetic Association. So specifically the American Diabetic Association, the ADA, I want to pick on them right now. The Canadian Diabetic Association is just as bad. I'm sure the European is just as bad. I think the UK is getting a little bit better, but I saw something the other day, and it was a picture on the internet. And it was a picture of, basically, I'll explain to you, and I'll put it in the video if I can, and maybe even in the show notes. But it was just a little stand, right? Like if you go to donate blood, or if you go to a health stand, or a health seminar, you're in a room like that, right? Like a little stand with a little cover, a little whatever tablecloth in the front that has a little banner. A very typical thing you'd see at a trade show or anything like that. Okay, so the one I saw today, and I'm looking at it right now, it says "Stop Diabetes." Has a little hand with a little blood mark, and all the American Diabetes Association logo. And then on the table itself are snacks. I'm gonna try and blow this up so I can see it. Okay, there's Rice Krispie Squares, there are Ritz crackers, there are whip sticks or Pixie sticks, sorry, a bunch of other snacks, basically all garbage. And I want to talk about that for a second. And it's obvious to a lot of people, and it may sound like I'm just harping on it, and I'm barking up the wrong tree, or I'm whatever you want to call it. But I need to call them out. I need to call out any association right now for diabetics, because let's put a couple facts out there. Most diabetics around the world are type 2 diabetics. Okay, if you're a diabetic, you probably know that. There are still a lot of type 1 diabetics, and the difference between type 1 diabetics and type 2 diabetics, I'm going to simplify it very, very easy right now. There's a little bit of nuance in there, of course, so I might not be 100% right, but in a nutshell, type 1 diabetics, generally speaking, don't produce insulin, or enough insulin from your pancreas to control your blood sugar. In a nutshell, that's what type 1 diabetes. Oftentimes it's diagnosed very young, whether it's at birth or whether it's at adolescence, but soon into life, before the age of 20, usually, there's some sort of awareness, or the idea that blood sugar goes out of control and you can't control it. So insulin is needed. Type 1 diabetics. I'm not talking about type 1 diabetics because type 1 diabetes is really considered by a lot of people an autoimmune disease and goes much deeper. And I don't know that much about it, but I want to talk about it in another episode. This episode, I want to talk about type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is the diabetes that used to be called adult onset diabetes, called sugar diabetes. It's the diabetes that, for lack of a better term, you just get after a while. Some people get it when they're 20. Some people get it when they're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Like I said, years ago, really it was just older people that got it. I mean, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds. It was very common in older people. Now it's super, super common in old people. Very common in 60-year-olds, very common in 50-year-olds and 40-year-olds and 30-year-olds. There are children now with type 2 diabetes. There are a lot of children with type 2 diabetes. This is what I want to talk about, folks. Type 2 diabetes. If you're a type 2 diabetic right now, I'm not giving you shit. I'm not harping on you. I'm not blaming you. But I just want to lay a couple facts out because I know I need tough love. And if you appreciate tough love, here it is. Type 2 diabetes happens when your body can't keep up with the amount of blood sugar, with your blood sugar level. So type 2 diabetes is when you still produce insulin for the most part. A lot of people still produce insulin when they're type 2 diabetic, but at the late stage of it, you may not produce any insulin at all. But for most people, they still produce enough, and they still produce insulin, but not enough to control their blood sugar. Why do you need blood sugar or insulin again, folks? Insulin controls your blood sugar because high blood sugar means death. You will die if your blood sugar goes too high. So it's very, very important to have insulin in your system to lower your blood sugar. And again, blood sugar, where does it go? It goes into your muscles, it goes into your liver, it goes into your fat cells, it goes to your brain. If you need it. If you don't need it in the muscles, in the liver, and in the brain, it just goes to your fat cells. Okay. Type 2 diabetes, again, is when you're essentially assaulting your pancreas, making your pancreas pump out all this insulin for a long, again, I'm just really simplifying it, folks. And again, I'm not a doctor, but essentially what it is when you're abusing your pancreas for too long, your pancreas pumps out a lot of insulin. It can't do it for that long. And two things happen. Your cells become insulin resistant, right? So they need more insulin, right, to do the job, what it did before. Insulin opens up the cells so it can let in sugar or let in glucose. If you're insulin resistant, then you need more of that insulin in order to do its job. That's the first thing. Secondly, if you need more insulin to do that, then, if you become insulin resistant, that's the first thing. Secondly, once you have that high insulin level and then once you have that high sugar level and you keep on eating insulin to bring it down again, every time your insulin level goes down, every time insulin does its job and your blood sugar goes down again, you get a sugar crash and you get hungry. It's a crash, right? So you need to eat again. And this is the up and down that happens with type 2 diabetes. And it happens all the time. And it's very, very common. A lot of people, and this is what gets me crazy. A lot of people are finding tremendous success with this, with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, reversing it, completely changing their life by having a low carbohydrate diet, going to a ketogenic diet, having a carnivore diet even. The idea though, and what I'm getting at, is that they're removing carbohydrates. Why are they removing carbohydrates? Because you have sugar diabetes, for God's sakes, right? I'm not trying to be funny with it, but if you have a disease or if you have an ailment or if you have an illness as a result of chronic high blood sugar, would you suggest a trade table, a consulting table, or whatever this is, a stand full of treats? Would you do that? If you were the head of the American Diabetes Association, would you make sure that the snacks they have are healthy? Would you make sure that the snacks you give people during a conference don't raise their blood sugar, right? Don't perpetuate their problem? Would you be interested in that? And if you're not interested in that, what the hell is going on? It's a real question, folks. It doesn't take a genius to realize that sugar diabetes, right? Again, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, we should at least look at the sugar. Like, my goodness, it's not a deficiency in insulin. It's not like these people that are type 2 diabetics have a genetic anomaly that their body just stops producing insulin. That's not what it is, right? There's not a genetic component to it. There may be hereditary component to it and a family, familial component, but really I think hereditary stuff and things that run in family are really just, for the most part, probably just run in habits, run in cultural thing more than actual DNA genetic thing. But again, folks, that's my beef. That's my beef, because what they should be giving is beef sticks. what they should be giving, or anything, even fruits and vegetables. Sure, even fruit is high in sugar, but it's going to be better than the shit that they give. Rice Krispie Squares, Pixie Sticks. What else is in there? I think it's like wheat thins. So white refined flour raise your blood sugar more than actual table sugar does, right? As a reminder, folks, we shouldn't be giving this. And this is what I'm talking about, common sense. The Canadian Diabetes Association does it as well. They tell you to eat many meals a day. They tell you to have these carbohydrate-rich meals and then tell you to take insulin. Here's my plea with you. If you're a type 2 diabetic, I want to see if there's any traction at all with this. If you're a type 2 diabetic, even if you know that the ketogenic diet can help you, or a carnivore diet can help you, or a low sugar diet can help you, but it's too difficult for you to do it, okay, hear me out. Even if you know and it's too difficult for you to do it, I have your question. Ask your doctor about it. What does your doctor say? If you have a diabetes, but you probably have an endocrinologist, right? If you're diabetic, talk to your endocrinologist. Ask them what they think about a ketogenic diet. It's getting around. People are talking about it. The medical community is talking about it more and more. And let me know what they say, because if you have a good endocrinologist, in my opinion, and if they're up to speed on what's going on, then I hope that they are at least suggesting a low carbohydrate diet, folks. Again, the more you think about diabetes, the more you're going to bang your head against the wall and wonder why the hell they still give you sugar. Why they tell you to eat every 5 hours or 6 hours or whatever, 4 hours. I don't know how many hours it is, but it seems like you're grazing all day long and you're keeping your insulin. Keep on eating food. You're going to keep on raising your insulin level, right? Chronic insulin has a whole host of other things wrong with it. And again, at the same time, they're notorious for shitting on fat and protein and, animal foods over the years, the Diabetes Association. So do me a favor, if you're a type 2 diabetic, and talk to your endocrinologist, talk to your doctor, say, what kind of food would you suggest I eat for a diabetic? If they're not telling you what kind of food you should be eating, go talk to somebody else. You deserve answers, right? Like I said earlier in the show, we're in a time where our lives are at risk. There's experimental this going on. There's a deadly virus going on. Is it deadly? Is it not deadly? Of course. Like other things, people are dying from it, right? But people are dying from a lot of other things. So I don't know. That's my beef with the American Diabetes Association. And again, the Canadian Diabetes Association is the same. I'm not specifically shitting on them today, but maybe I'll have a link with them. But that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, folks. And it's about common sense. And really, maybe this is a movement that's going to be a grassroots movement. And I really do think it is. Like everything else as far as your own choices. We control the market. We control the market by our choices. We control the market by our purchases. And maybe we will control organizations like this as well. If you donate to the American Diabetes Association or any association that you don't agree with them, let them know what you think, or stop donating, or donate with them and say, hey, you should do this, or I'm not going to, whatever the case may be, but let them know what you're doing and why you feel that way. And that's how things change, I guess, right? I could just shit on them, but really they're going to know. The American Diabetes Association is made up of volunteers. It's made up of diabetics. It's made up of healthcare practitioners, it's endocrinologists, and everybody. So let them know. And just goes, I kind of want to wrap this up on just common sense in general, right? The places that we're going for health, we really need to expect more from them. The places that, the COVID shot, here's another thing. I saw advertised everywhere. Get your COVID shot. Get your free lollipop, or get your donut, or get your muffin, or get your ho-ho, or get your Twinkie. Please, folks, please, I'm urging you. If you're in the healthcare profession, if you care about human beings, stop feeding this shit to them. Stop suggesting anybody in the world eat Rice Krispie Squares. If you're a medical professional and you're okay with that, then you have a problem. I'm sorry. If you're not a medical professional and you don't have a problem with that, that's okay. That's not your obligation. You're not employed. You haven't sworn to an oath to protect life and to always look out for the good of humans. If you have, then you couldn't possibly suggest any of that. That's just my beef with you. If you're a carpenter, you're not going to suggest the worst products. You're not going to suggest a terrible method. You're not going to suggest somebody do something that's going to make their house fall apart, or that is going to need a repair in 10 years. And if you do, you're unethical. It should be the same for a doctor. It should be the same for a nutritionist. It should be the same for a dietitian. All right, folks, that's my rant for today. I love you all. Even though I'm passionate, even though I get crazy mad sometimes about this stuff, I do hope the best for people. And I do think that there's, we're getting somewhere, right? The growing movement, the keto movement, the carnivore movement, the common sense movement, the whole idea that freedom is important. That's all part of it, folks. Freedom over our food, freedom over our medicine, freedom over our children, our education, and our healthcare. This is all important. This is all important stuff. And again, if you're diabetic, talk to your endocrinologist. See what they say. If they don't know about the carnivore diet, if they don't know about a ketogenic diet to help diabetes, let them know. I'm sure they'd appreciate it if they're open-minded. Folks, thanks so much for listening. Just a short episode. Again, here's my concerns on the COVID. The safety, of course. Why are they suggesting it to people, to children? Why are they suggesting to people who don't need it? And why is there such this mass effort to go and where it seems like they're going against our freedoms? I haven't talked about that too much, but it seems like there's really this, not only a peer pressure against our freedoms, but really the rumblings, suggestions that certain states are okay with it, and certain states are kind of floating the idea around, folks, we'll never get back your freedoms if we lose them. So let's fight. That's all I gotta say. I love you all. Peace. Thank you so much for listening to Fatso Radio. Thank you much for watching, for subscribing. Don't forget to hit the notifications bell so you'll get notified when a new episode comes out every single Friday. Episode 121. Thanks so much for listening, folks. I love you all. Peace. Fatso Radio. Bye. Let's say bye to everybody. Bye. And we'll say thanks for listening. Say thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Fatso Radio, the really great podcast show.
Fatso Radio, the really great podcast show.
So get your butt and get in your chair.
Don't eat your nails and don't pull your hair.
We'll talk about chicken or talk about steak.
We'll talk about fat, for goodness sake.
Fatso, the really great podcast show.
Fatso, a very first podcast show.